In this episode, I will tell you why the Philippines was recently ranked the least safe country for travelers in the world. Before you shrug off the survey, wait until you hear the criteria and why it's actually listed like this. Hello Safe Safety Index 2025 uses 35 objective criteria across 5 main categories. Here is what it means. Here are the criteria: natural disasters, 30 points, coastal and river flooding, earthquakes, tsunamis, rising sea levels, violence in society, 20 points, perceived level of criminality, number of refugee and internally displaced persons, homicide rates, incarceration rates, armed conflict, ongoing internal or external conflicts, rebel insurgencies or regional tensions, healthcare and infrastructure, number of hospital beds, government healthcare spending, accessibility and quality of medical care, militarization, military spending as a percentage of GDP, presence in the deployment of military forces. So why was the Philippines ranked so low? The Philippines ranked 82.32, the highest and thus the worst in the safety index, indicating that it faced major risks across multiple categories, which contributed to its ranking. High exposure to natural disasters, including frequent typhoons, earthquakes, and risks of sea level rising. Even recently, have you seen how much flooding is going on in the Philippines? So many people pass away, and tourists are no exception. Persistent social, basically societal violence includes crime and insurgencies, activities of the New People's Army and other armed groups. Internal armed conflicts. Basically, this article goes on to explain exactly why the Philippines was rated the worst country for travelers. Do not forget, this is not for long-term stayers or someone with a wife or someone that knows the ins and outs of the country because they've been here so long. This is simply for travelers, and it starts to make sense once you consider their criteria. And just because you feel safe individually does not mean that this is the norm or the average that a traveler will face when visiting the Philippines. Whether I agree completely or not about the survey is not the point, but it starts to make sense when you consider the increased rise in crime, especially recently. It's not that silly. You could go to the Philippines and get caught in the earthquake, shortly followed by a tsunami. A typhoon could hit the following day and the same location. While attempting to evade all these dangers, you can get a small cut on your leg that turns into a staph infection. You go to the overcrowded hospitals and eventually you see the doctor. He prescribes you an antibiotic and sends you on your way. The antibiotics don't work, and a few days later, you're in the hospital again. Now the infection has spread. You go septic. They manage to save you but chop off your leg. You recover enough to fly back to your home country. Your home country doctor informs you that all this could have been prevented if the original doctor hadn't been shooting from the hip and given you the correct antibiotics. You're pissed now, and at the airport, you get to your terminal and airport security stops you in your wheelchair. They say they found a bullet in your bag, luggage. They ask you for 5,000 USD, or you spend the time in Philippine Slammer. This is a fictitious story, but a little bit of everything I just mentioned happens to people traveling to the Philippines every single year. This man's joke is actually very plausible. Another person says, I think Afghanistan, South Sudan, Mali is more dangerous. On the surface, they are. Yes, overall, I would say so. But how many vloggers have you seen that are Caucasian, American, go to these places and have no issues? Of course, they're not all safe, but the local people tend to not mind. Hirizard says, what? I have not once felt unsafe while being there, even in the sketchy regions not meant for tourists to put their eyes on. Like, I'm talking Tondo levels of sketchy. Yet all I ever encountered were smiles and warm personalities. I guess it helps if you don't act like a rich asshat, but other than that, I could name 30 countries off the top of my head that feel less safe for sure. Here is a perfect example of people not understanding the facts do not care about your feelings. Just because you, as one individual, feel safe in a place does not automatically make that place safe for tourism. This list was based off of 5 categories, each one having multiple different subcategories. That's why this list provided us with the Philippines. The truth is, the country is in shambles. Yes, I would have to agree. I would not probably say it's the least or most dangerous for tourists, but based off of their criteria, it starts to make sense. Also, once more thing to consider, many of the places you mentioned that are less safe is not really a place for tourism. The Philippines promotes the country for tourism. They tell you it has the best beaches. Rebuilder says, well, I think it all boils down to the tact that if anything happens to your health, I believe they mean fact, that if anything happens to your health while you're here, you're out of luck. Hospitals are only here in the hope that a foreigner will walk in so they can have a bigger Christmas party than the last year's. My daily grievance is the mental battle between taking my wife and kids back to Australia versus continuing to risk that inevitable day when I'm that poor bugger walking in a hospital door. That's if my ambulance even makes it to the location before I'm dead. The place is just rooted from the inside out. You better have a pretty bloody good girl here to warrant that risk. And once again, it all boils down to that girl. The only reason why any man is here is for the woman or simply because they've never been to any other country. They're simply losers, too comfortable to even get out and actually explore. Imagine wanting to come over 8,000 miles across the world just so you can feel like you're back in America. Yes, I too prefer conveniences, but so many other countries provide you that convenience along with culture, food, history, and yes, even women if you simply don't go for the easiest ones and the easy picking women that every other man has had their way with. That is why HIV, STD is through the roof. And believe me when I tell you, it's at least 100 times worse than what they say. How many of these men or kids, teenagers, girls, whatever, do you think actually go to the clinic and are recorded factually and their data is collected? I'm telling you, the place is a cesspool. You are 100% guaranteed to catch something if you decide not to use protection. If you don't realize it now, 1 month later, 2 months later, I promise you, you'll get something. So keep that in mind. What do you think makes you special? An overweight, older loser that comes from the West, you are not what they're looking for. You're simply a wallet. That's it. And if you're not that person, I have a feeling you're not listening to these videos. So yes, let's face the facts that men come here for the easy women. Why? Because we are having problems of our own one way or another. This is today's catfish. How do you go from this to this? The best comment from yesterday's video is from TSIF. You might think he is exaggerating, but no, it's all 100% accurate. That one is the most popular, showing that it's actually much worse in the Philippines than I am telling you. There is no worse comment. Thank you for watching. God bless.